name is Jacob Birnbaum, and I'll be your moderator for this forum. The U.S. Constitution says that the people of the United States are allowed to elect our leaders. Even we, as students, understand how important it is to choose our leaders when casting our ballot, as the choices they make will affect our future. We, therefore, are looking forward to the discussion of the important issues in our state. The rules for this forum are simple. Each speaking opportunity will be for 2 minutes. The timekeeper will inform you an in-pulse sound at the 2-minute limit. Now, I'd like to ask that we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, we will meet and learn more about our candidates for the Vermont House. This includes Mike McCarthy, Kate LaRose, Casey Tooth, and Jim Fitzgerald. When I say your name, please spend 2 minutes introducing yourself and explaining why you are running for office. Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you so much, Jacob, and for everyone here at Team USA and at St. Albans City School for having us this evening. I'm Mike McCarthy, and I am running to be the state representative for this district, Franklin 3-1, which is St. Albans City in the southern part of the town. So a little bit about me. I'm a city councilor. I see Mayor Tim Smith's here in the back. It's been a pleasure being on city council since last spring. And I work in the renewable energy sector, doing solar projects like the solar panels up on the roof at St. Albans Town School, and if permitting goes well, we'll have a solar canopy over the parking lot here at City School that I'm working on for next year. My campaign is about building an economy that works for everyone, and that includes students. My daughter Molly is a first grader here in Team Explorers, and I can't tell you how much I've valued how this community and the school, the staff, the teachers, just wrap our children in learning in a supportive environment, and I want to make sure that we have the ability in Vermont to continue to support a strong education system that we have today. I spent this afternoon at St. Michael's College talking about my job in renewable energy. St. Mike's is my alma mater, and we have the ability to really tackle what I think is going to be the most critical and what could be the biggest opportunity and is the biggest challenge that all of you in Team USA are going to face in your lives, and that's climate change. I am very proud to be doing a little bit of work to change the way that we get energy and to promote a lower carbon environment, and I think we can do that without raising regressive taxes. So I'm very, very pleased to be here tonight. I very much look forward to representing you, your parents, but especially I want to keep our comments to the future that we in the state legislature and the folks who serve you, the future that we can create for all of our students and children. It's a very exciting opportunity to be here, and this is the forum that I most look forward to in every election season. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. Ms. LaRose?
Thank you, Jacob. And first, just an apology to everyone. I'm here tonight with a pretty severe double ear infection, and against the better judgment and wishes of my doctor, I said I was going to come tonight because this felt too important, but I'll be leaving immediately afterwards, so I won't be able to stay for the Senate portion. I'm Kate LaRose. I am also running for state representative for Franklin 3-1. I believe in the power of community and making sure that everyone has a place at the table. I am running because I want more of this for St. Albans as a citizen and as a mom raising my family here, including my 5-year-old Jackson, who just started kindergarten here at City School. I have an MBA, and I'm a gubernatorial appointee to 2 statewide boards. I served my country as a Peace Corps and an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer. I have worked with state departments of commerce and education, managing millions in state and federal funding, and at a small international business managing state and private contracts. For the past 2 years, I've been a director of a social services program where I lead a 7-member team that supports low-income families and entrepreneurs wanting to achieve their financial goals. These experiences have exposed me to the complicated and interrelated nature of business and economic systems in education, and the vital importance that small business plays in creating a thriving Main Street. These experiences have also underscored in me my belief of the limitless capacity of my community and my community members when we come together. This is why I'm running.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald? Wait, no. Mr. Toof, sorry.
Okay.
Jason, or go ahead. No, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really, like Mike said, I was looking forward to this debate or forum or whatever we want to call it when I first heard about it. My name is Casey Toof. I'm running for the House here in St. Albans. A little bit about myself. I grew up here in St. Albans. I grew up just a block away over on Savage Street, which is the street between where the city pool is, where I learned to swim, and the Little League field where I spent most of my summer. I went to city school from 1990 to 99. I actually had a couple teachers that are here when I was there. I won't say their names because it was a little bit ago. I went to BFA, and from there, when I graduated, I went to Castleton State College, which is Castleton University now. That's where I majored in history and education. I also served on the Castleton College Court, where I was the Chief Justice. It was probably my first time getting involved in politics at a school level. I've also coached here when I was 18, and I coached ever since I've been 18. I've been giving back to my community that way. I'm also on the Planning Commission in the St. Albans town. When I graduated college, I got my first job in politics. I worked on Governor Douglas's campaign, and from there I became the marketing manager at a local car dealership, which led to my job now. I own my own company. I do marketing for small businesses and nonprofits. 4 years ago, I married my wife, Ashley. We have 2 boys, Callan and Lucas, who are 3 and 2, which really comes to the question of why I decided to run. I want them to be able to grow up here in St. Albans. I want them to take advantage of everything St. Albans has to offer. We have a great community here, but it's becoming more and more expensive for taxpayers every year. Property taxes, gas taxes. Many of my friends have decided to move out, and yeah, so I look forward to this debate. I appreciate you having me here.
Thank you. Mr. Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Jason. I'm very pleased to be here. I don't like following all this talent. It puts me in a tough position. But these folks here running like I wish to do the very best we can for our community. There's no problem between the 4 of us. Jim Fitzgerald, I'm a former mayor of the city of St. Albans. I'm a 3-time legislator in the House. I served on the city council in St. Albans, the Bellis Free Academy board for 12 years. And I seek to go back to Montpelier because I'm concerned at the direction this state has taken during the past few years and the future that I believe is coming. This is an unaffordable state to live in, no doubt about it. Our senior citizens are hurting to the core. They have not received an increase in their pensions for perhaps 5, 6, 7 years, while the costs continue to climb in our government. It's a tough situation. I think that we need to have someone in Montpelier that knows how to and will reach across the aisle and work with the other parties. It's critical. And everybody that runs for this office says they're going to do that. I promise you, if I'm elected, I will do that. That's the only promise I'm going to make, is to work with the other 149 members of the House and the 30 senators. I hope to achieve some stability in our costs in state government. The schools are very important to me. I'm a former business manager at Bellis Free Academy, and I'm a former railroad man. I worked in the railroad industry in this town, and I was town manager in Milton and St. Johnsbury for a number of years. So I believe I have the experience with local community, how it ought to operate. I think I'm a good communicator. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I'd like to introduce Jack Spar with the first question.
All right. Thank you, Jacob. So our first question for you today is that, so Vermont schools are currently funded mainly by property taxes. With homeowners and businesses complaining about the ever-increasing burden, do you think that the current system is fair, and what improvements would you make on it? We'll start with you, Mr. McCarthy.
Well, thank you very much. So we hear about property taxes. I think all 4 of us have done a lot of knocking on doors and talking to many of our neighbors, and property taxes come up very, very frequently. So There's a number of ways to look at the lens of fairness. And in Vermont, we do a great job of educating many of our children, and in large part because a few years ago, decisions were made to make sure that there weren't just rich communities that had great schools and poor communities that didn't get to spend much on schools. And that level of fairness is one that I can definitely support. But right now, for working class Vermonters, especially on the lower end of the income spectrum that are property owners or rent payers, they're paying much more than their fair share of the burden to pay for our schools. I look at, when we think about cost of our schools, I want to look first at quality. What are we trying to accomplish? And what are the demands that we're putting on the system? Right now, we're asking our schools to take many students who increasingly, I know you probably know that a lot of your peers don't show up to school ready to learn. The problems that they bring with them from home, the issues that we've had with drug addiction, substance use disorders, I should say, are getting us to a place where it's more and more expensive to educate fewer and fewer students because of what we're asking our schools to do. So I would like a system of property taxes that's less reliant on property tax, that recognizes that many of the expenses that we're forcing on schools are not really part of what we traditionally considered pre-K to 12 education. And I believe that we could have a more fair tax system if we made it more based on income and ability to pay, rather than asking those who can least afford it, that happen to be property owners or rent payers, to pay more and more and more every year. But we need to make those critical investments in education, and I will always make sure that we're delivering for you students and for the people of our community, and that we're making those early investments so that we don't have to make bigger investments in things like correction later.
We'll go with you, Mr. Rose, and work our way down.
In 1997, Act 60 passed, and this created more equity for schools and for students. This also resulted in higher quality education for all. In other words, it created a much fairer system. Kids living in rich towns, kids living in poor towns were able to go to equitably funded schools. This is a fair system. Our current system of school funding, however, is not fair, and it's complicated and confusing to most. It favors high-income Vermonters, and those at the top are paying a much lower rate, percentage of their income, than those of us in the middle at the bottom. So by way of comparison, for a family that is making about $125,000 a year, they might be paying 3%, where those who are making over $500,000 to $1 million are going to be paying less than half of that, so somewhere around 1%. That's just not fair. Taxes really ought to be based on the ability to pay, and based on fairness. So opponents will say that when you move from a system of property taxes to income taxes, there's going to be too much volatility there and it's not going to work. But what we actually know based on the economic analyses is over the last 20 years, when you look at the total amount of income in the state, that grew. It was more stable than the education grand list. So when you look at the education grand list and it changes because of volatility, like for example what happened in 2006 and 2007 with real estate, that's going to lead to annual property tax adjustments, and that's not anticipated for property homeowners, and that's also unfair. At the individual level, if someone's income goes down, say they lose their job or they retired, you actually want to be paying less in taxes. That's how it should work. So that is also a fairer system that makes sense. So yes, I absolutely agree that this shift should happen. It's fair for the whole spectrum, from young families just starting out to those who are retiring and wanting to be able to afford and stay in Vermont, and to all the rest of us in the middle. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the question. Let me give you a little background of how my campaign has been run so far before I answer this question. I've been to over 4,000 doors. I've talked to thousands of people just this year alone in the last couple months. And the overwhelming response I'm hearing from people in the community is that Vermont is not affordable. I alluded to that in my introduction. I'd say, when I say overwhelming, I'm saying 90% of the people I'm talking to say it's too expensive to live here. Our property taxes went up again. 5 years from now, I'm leaving. When I retire, I'm leaving. That really hurts me, because there's a reason I decided to stay in St. Albans. Was because it's my community. It's where I came up. Is where I grew up. It's where my family is. I don't want to leave, and I don't want my friends to leave. There's talks about carbon tax that could pass in the next couple of years, which would be an even bigger burden on working families that want to may commute to Burlington or out of the county, and it would just make it more unaffordable. I want to make it easier for businesses to set up shop. When a company wants to come in, it's something like 30% of their overall cost to start a business and build a building here is just in permits for them. When they want to give us jobs for people to work at, that will pay property taxes to help fund our schools. This is concerning to me. We talked about renters, people that are renting. Well, this last year in the legislative session, the legislature tried to pass a property tax increase when we had a large surplus. The governor vetoed that, but they still passed a non-residential rate, so people that are renting will see their rent go up. And those are the kind of taxes that we're talking about. I'm in a group chat with my friends from college, and my buddy who lives in Arizona was telling me just last night. He said it's like they don't want you to live there, because we were just talking about all the burdens that are on every day, just from the DMV to gas tax to our property taxes, and it's just it really stuck to me that he said that, and that's really something I want to focus on. Thank you.
I wished I could tell you over the past 50 years how many education funding formulas we've been through in the state of Vermont. Many of those changes were what I call knee-jerk reactions. They were not well studied. They were keep them quiet and slap something down. Act 46 to some degree has been exactly that case. I don't believe that Montpelier people intended to shut down our small schools. I have never thought that. But I do think that they wished and had hoped that the local officials would do that for them. It proves, again, folks, that one size doesn't fit all in this state. I'm a local control guy. I always have been a local control guy. I think we know best what we need for our kids in our schools, and I think we ought to handle those situations locally. Yes, the state has to help us, and yes, the state has to guide us. They don't have to be the whole show. I think, quite honestly, that we get a lot of mileage out of the school taxes that we pay. It's strange from what I'm hearing. I ran a very informal poll on Facebook this fall, and I asked folks what they thought about the income tax funding education instead of the present system of the property taxes. I was stunned. 65% of those who responded, and there were 60 people who responded, said no, don't go to the income tax. I would have bet it was going to be any other way than that, but I'm still willing to look at that if it becomes an issue in Montpelier, and I think it will. I do think that I favor that to some degree. I think there's got to be a solution where we try to fund it, get the best bang we can for the bucks we spend.
All right, thank you. I'd now like to welcome Nicholas Crespin up for the second question.
Thank you, Jack. As some of you may know, we are part of the Maple Run Unified School District. Act 41 states that all schools must be consolidated by the end of 2019. What are your thoughts on the current status of the consolidation, and what impact has it had on Vermont education? We'll start with you, Ms. LaRose.
Thank you. So we have a lot to be proud of when it comes to our education system in Vermont and here locally in St. Albans. This is a result of our continued investment in what we believe to be a public good, education, which benefits our students, our community, and our state's economy as a whole. We here in St. Albans voluntarily made the merger, and we made that successfully. And that's resulted in more options for students and families. That's resulted in being able to share personnel between schools, and also over $1 million in savings, which is significant. This demonstrates the positive outcomes that were intended in Act 46. However, I know that that's not the case for other communities. Some other communities, some right here in our own county, are feeling that they're not being listened to, they're not being heard, they're not being valued. That's not what we want either. Right now, where we're at with Act 46 and school mergers, the State Board of Education has final say, and we have up to 35 school districts right now that are going to be joining a statewide lawsuit. So right now, it's not currently a legislative issue. Right now, it's being meted out as the act was intended. But if it does become one again, I believe there are 3 criteria that we need to keep in mind and base any subsequent decision on. So the criteria would be what's best for students, what's best for our communities, and what's going to save taxpayers money, in that order. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think I want to echo a lot of what Jim said in his last response. I think Act 46 was enacted and passed because it had some good ideas. I think the intent was to save taxpayers money. I think they wanted to consolidate schools so that we can share resources and maybe diminish some of the admin costs that drive up our school budgets. But I don't think we've seen many of those yet, at least in reflection to our property taxes that we talked about earlier. I understand the importance of schools. I understand the importance of public schools. I went to city, like I said, I went to city school. I went to BFA. I also went to a state college. I understand what we need out of our public schools. I think what we need to focus on is the importance of our local control. When we lost our local control with Act 60 and now Act 46, when they're talking about consolidating schools, we don't have the control. We're having people in Montpelier under the Golden Dome make decisions on what's right for St. Albans. Someone from Brattleboro, someone from Montpelier, someone from anywhere else in the state is telling us what we need to know, what they think is best for us in St. Albans. I don't think that's the case. We need to. I'm a big proponent of local control, and that's what I would do. Thanks.
I think you heard candidate LaRose hit the nail right on the head. She said, in the end, the State Board of Education will make the decision whether to proceed with this program, Act 46, or whether they will not. That is the problem, ladies and gentlemen, in my view. Those decisions should be made locally. I think we know the kids best, we know the school staff best, we know our taxpayers, we know the base, we know the history of our community, and we should know that better than, as Casey suggested, some guy from White River Junction. Let him take care of White River Junction. We'll take care of St. Albans. It's not a good thing. I don't like to see the control of our local communities go 70 miles south of here. It's not, in my judgment, a good thing to do. I'm a local supporter. I trust the people that we elect, and that's where I think we ought to be doing our business. I don't think Montpelier cares too much about how we feel about the issues. We run our own show here. We're independent Vermonters, and St. Albans people have always led the way as being independents. I think we ought to stay with that course of action, and that's certainly what I will push for if I'm fortunate enough to be elected.
So, Act 46 was really pushed as 2 things. It was going to save money, which is very debatable, and it was supposed to be designed to increase the quality and the access to a diversity of programming for students in small schools that couldn't offer things like, say, foreign language or different kinds of arts or music, because we have some schools that are very, very small. We're fortunate in this community that Act 46, I think, was really a net gain for us. Our communities, Fairfield, St. Albans City, and St. Albans Town, were well positioned to take advantage of a consolidation, and we're, in a lot of ways, moving in that direction. I would say, to sum up the things I agree with what some of the other candidates have said, is that if schools are making that commitment to quality for students, if they're doing right by the taxpayers and they're keeping their budgets under control, why should the state be going in and telling them that they need to consolidate and merge? So the one-size-fits-all approach really isn't working. In regard to some of the comments that have been made around affordability and the relationship between the property tax and the grand list, I think you can look to what we've done here in St. Albans, where we've made public investments with innovative financing that has allowed us to grow the grand list. And when you grow the grand list, you have the resources to tackle some of the tough problems that you have and to spend money without increasing property tax rates. So the real way out of the kind of crisis that we have of the ability to afford property taxes is that we need economic growth. And that's going to come from probably some very smart and targeted public investments that help industries grow, but it's really going to come in terms of the private investment and us laying out the infrastructure and the regulatory environment as legislators so that businesses can grow. I was at a steel manufacturer this morning talking to them about saving money and doing a project with my business, and what they were saying they really need is more skilled workers, and those investments we're making in education are going to help our economy grow. So that's really the way that we make things more affordable from a property tax perspective.
All right. I'd like to introduce Jackson Hayes for the next question.
Thank you, Nick. Currently, parents are being separated from their children because of addictions to opiates. The opioid addiction crisis, which has been going on since the 1990s, has gone worse with over 101 opioid-related deaths as of 2017. What are your views on the opioid crisis in Vermont, and how can we counteract it? Let's start with you, Mr. Toof.
Thank you. First, I have to say that these questions have been great. I think it really reflects that you guys understand what the issues I'm hearing going door to door. The opiate problem is something that it's probably affected most people in this room. People have lost family members, people have lost friends, I've lost close friends. It's really troubling, it's really tough to see. I think as a community, St. Albans has done a great job over the last, I'd say, 8 years at tackling this problem. Our local legislators have done a good job at addressing this issue in Montpelier, and I think that we're going to continue. I think there's greener pastures ahead. I really do. I've toured, I think the systems that we've put in place are starting to work. Toured BART down there, I think most of us have, and there's hundreds of people that are looking to get treatment, and that's encouraging to me that people are looking to get treatment. And I think the cops and the law enforcement have done a good job. We read about it in the paper every day. It's gone away from, oh, I have a loved one that has a drug addiction, or I have a loved or a family member, and now it's society's problem. It's society has to deal with it. And I think what we do is we continue treatments for people that are looking to get treatment. I think there needs to be harsher penalties for drug dealers and people that are supplying this and taking advantage of our most vulnerable citizens. And I really think that I think we're on the right track, and I would continue to follow the step that our local legislators have done. Thank you.
We're going through a very serious time in our state and the nation, for that matter. This is a terrible problem. And I'm glad and I'm pleased that I'm not a person your age facing these challenges today. But I want to encourage you, when you know these sort of things are going on, talk to your teachers. Your teachers will talk to you about this, and it needs to be done. And Montpelier and the legislature needs to lead the way. Should we punish pharmaceutical companies? No, not my judgment. I've heard some discussion going on. It was a horrible thing that somebody gets $10 to run for office because he took $10 from a pharmaceutical company. There are times when you're very pleased to have those companies manufacturing what they manufacture. As a society, we have to be smart enough to use those as they're deemed to be used. We need to talk to church leaders. Your churches need to become more involved. The legislature needs to be more involved. But the legislature isn't a one-size-fits-all answer to your problems. When you're in horrible pain, these painkillers are nice to have, but you've got to know how to use them and use them responsibly. As a legislator, I would do everything in my power to punish doctors, physicians who hand out huge doses. Because if a doctor instructs you to take a certain medicine, you're going to take it. Be not afraid to speak with your parents about these problems. Ask questions. How many of you folks right here read a newspaper every day? Nobody? Read a newspaper every day. Do you have newspapers in the library here available to you kids? Then make sure you listen to the news at night. That's how you're going to learn. Good.
Yeah, thanks for asking this really important question. I've lost 3 people that were close to me in my life, 2 of whom I went to school with, to substance use disorders, and the status quo isn't good enough. I want to say that I'm proud that the City Council, in partnership with the town, has made the investment in the street crimes unit. and that we are making the law enforcement investments we need for our community to be safe, but we're never going to police our way or prison our way or punish people out of this crisis. It's not, those policies are very important, but they're not how we're going to solve the opiate epidemic. The worst drug dealers on the planet are pharmaceutical industries who told doctors and hospitals that these drugs were safe. Purdue Pharmaceutical is a perfect example of a company that said, hey, we've got this time-release opioid narcotic called OxyContin. It's hard to abuse. You know, it's a miracle pain drug, everybody said in the 90s. Well, now here we are, 20-plus years later, dealing with the aftermath of those drugs being overprescribed. And I'm very proud that this hospital has really stepped up. Our physicians in this community have really stepped up and changed the practices and done a lot of public education and reduced the amount of overprescription, but there's still a ton of overprescription happening across the state that we can address. We need to support and monitor the work of the hub and spoke model. Having better access to treatment has been great. There's still a dearth of treatment in the state that's effective for substance use disorders. We need to make bigger investments in proven drug treatment, and a big way of how we could fund that is by ending our use and our reliance on private prisons and bringing that money back home and putting that into treatment. And also, I'm very proud that our Attorney General, T.J. Donovan, is going after some of those pharmaceutical companies that lied to us about how safe their drugs were. So there are a lot of things that we can be doing. The status quo is not good enough, and I'll be a champion for reforms that will help end this crisis.
Thank you, Jackson. So first I want to share a couple of statistics from the National Institutes of Health and the National Institute of Drug Abuse. The first is that roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. Between 8 and 12% develop an opioid use disorder, and about 80% of people who used heroin first misused prescription opioids. So this is a problem, clearly, and this is a problem at the manufacturer level. Mr. Fitzgerald brought up in passing campaign contributions, and just like big tobacco, big pharma manufacturers absolutely knew what the risks were. In some cases, intentionally misled or lied to doctors, and doctors in turn had to mislead and lie to people taking the medicine and creating and perpetuating this epidemic. This is not okay. I will not take any campaign contributions from big tobacco or big pharma. I know that's not the same for everyone in this room. That, I think, needs to end. Also, last year in Vermont, when we had 107 deaths, that was the third straight year of record fatalities here in Vermont. 91% of deaths involve people with histories of prescription opiates. There is a direct, clear link here to how this works. And while this is happening, opioid producers are making record profits. Vermont, however, spent $70 million for opiate treatment programs between 2012 and 2017. I think we need to expand what's working, many of which were already named: the BART Treatment Center, the Hub and Spoke Addiction Treatment Centers, making Narcan, the opioid overdose reversing drug, more readily available, and increasing the use of medication-assisted therapy, MAT, in prisons. I also think we need to continue to limit and monitor painkiller prescriptions. So how are we going to pay for it? I absolutely agree that we hold manufacturers responsible. They're making killer profits while people are dying in the streets. So we need to hold them accountable for the death and destruction that's happening. The lawsuit against Purdue Pharma is one example, and we also need to tax opioid producers.
Thank you. We'd now like to conclude the first part of the forum with closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to share their final messages with the audience. Mr. Fitzgerald, you'll go first.
Thank you for that honor. Ladies and gentlemen, and young ladies and young men, I love community service. I have been in community service since 1966, when I was elected an alderman in the city of St. Albans, Ward 2. I want to go back. My wife says I'm a little, for wanting to go back and get in the mix and up here, but I love the game. I love representing you folks, and I love to see achievement and making your lives better. And that's the only reason I'm running. You go bankrupt down there insofar as salary is concerned. It's not money. It's the will to serve the people, and that's exactly what I'm asking you to do to allow me to do that. Thank you for this forum. The questions have been outstanding, and I'm very impressed with the kids in the audience here this evening. I want to thank the panel, the rest of the candidates here. They're very professional people, and I enjoy working with them. Thank you for your consideration.
So Jacob and all of your teammates here at Team USA and your teachers who are here this evening and help facilitate this, thank you so much. I really do just want to say again, this is the one campaign event that I really, really do get excited about every election season, so thank you for having us. I can't wait until Molly's in middle school and can do this with her. I think this election for your parents, I want them to think about who's got relevant experience that's going to be able to effectively represent this community down in Montpelier. I'm a former legislator, I'm on the city council, I'm a business person, I work in a very fast-growing industry, and the way that I believe that we're going to truly make Vermont more affordable and have an economy that works for everyone is by growing the economy in a sustainable way from the bottom up, where we really support families with basic benefits, and we make sure that we're not having an experience where we have two Vermonts and we're leaving a lot of lower income people as sort of a second class that's being left behind. So I want to stick up for everybody, but one of the most important things that I think we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight is making the investments that are going to make our environment and truly our economy as a result better, like investing the dollars that we need to in lake water quality. I want you all to be able to have your kids swim in a lake that doesn't have blue-green algae blooms, and those are the kinds of priorities that I'm going to make, is looking forward and investing for the future if I have the honor to represent you and your families in Montpelier. So I'm Mike McCarthy, and thank you very, very much for having us tonight.
First of all, I want to say thank you as well to Team USA. This is absolutely incredible to be able to be at this event. And as I was sharing with some students before we started, of all the forums that we've been to so far, these are absolutely the best digs, like the best chairs and the best setup. Love the stars with the red and the blue on the outside. Those are great. Thank you. And also, two of us here from the group of four, two of us will be going on to Montpelier to serve our community. And no matter who goes on, we want to make sure that we're investing in the best thing possible to invest in for our community. So I brought a book that's just about that I want to give to everyone who's running, so that if you go on to serve us, you will you'll have this resource. And I'll leave a book for Team USA as well. It's called What Matters: Investing in Results to Build Vibrant Communities. So when I think about what I want in a leader, when I think about who I want to be serving in the state legislature for my community, there are three quotes that come to mind, and I'm going to share them here with you. The first is from JFK. Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. The second, Martin Luther King. A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. And finally, Henry Ford. Don't find fault, find a remedy. With me, you will get a representative who will learn, who will listen, who will build consensus, and who will find remedies for St. Albans. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Team USA. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you to the candidates. This is obviously not an easy thing to do, so I really appreciate everyone throwing their hat in the ring. We have about 20 days left until the election, and I'm glad to see everyone's out working. And it's just to be said, it's really important to be involved. I got to say, I'm glad to see that our future of our community is really knowledgeable on all these topics, and they're actually talking about things that we're talking about on the campaign trail. I'm a product of St. Albans. I'm a product of this community. I grew up here. I sat in these chairs 21 years ago, and I want to make it easier for my friends and your generation to be able to stay here and grow up, raise a family, and find a job here. By doing that, I want to lower the tax burden, like I said. I want to improve our tech centers. I want to encourage students to go get involved in the trades to help build our workforce for the future. I also want to obviously battle the opiate epidemic, but most importantly, I think we need to make Vermont more affordable for businesses and people to be able to come back here, stay here, prosper, live, work, and raise a family, basically. So I thank you for your time. Thanks for listening to me. Thanks for all the questions. Thank you guys again. And if, yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
We'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come. In just a few minutes, we will begin the Senate Forum. On behalf of Team USA, we'd like to give you each a Team USA bracelet before you go. We will be taking a quick 5-minute intermission while we get the senators set up. Thank you. To the Team USA Senate Forum. This evening, we will meet and learn more about our candidates for Vermont Senate. This includes Pam McCarthy, Dustin Tanner, Corey Parent, and Randy Brock. When I say your name, please spend 2 minutes introducing yourself and explaining why you are running for office. Ms. McCarthy.
I'm Pam McCarthy, and I live in St. Albans town, and yes, I'm Mike's mom, who was sitting here in the chair before. Actually, I have 4 children and 5 grandchildren, and I value education quite a lot. I'm really excited to see what you guys are doing here tonight, Team USA, and thank you for inviting me. I have my master's degree in educational leadership. I had my first job here as full-time work in Vermont as a home visitor for the Parent-Child Center in Alberg. And from there I went on to be the director of the Family Center of Northwestern Vermont, and then the Agency of Human Services field director here in Franklin and Grand Isle. And now I run a statewide organization for families of children with disabilities and special health needs called Vermont Family Network. That's a $2.2 million organization that I run. I am running because I really am constantly asking myself, where am I best placed to make a difference? I've worked in early education and human services for a really long time, and I think I will bring a lot of experience, both from my leadership roles and from my life experience, to this position if I'm lucky enough to be elected. I really want to serve my community. I want to serve the state. And I think that Franklin County and Alberg can set a standard for national types of things if we're lucky. We do some really good work here in our community, and I'm anxious to serve. So thanks for inviting me tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Tanner?
Yeah, I want to start out by saying that I'm really excited to be here. The last couple election cycles I have seen as other candidates have done the Team USA forums, and I've always wanted to be in one of them myself. So now I get that chance to live that opportunity. My name is Dustin Tanner. I grew up in Fairfield, went to Fairfield Center School, which is now part of the Maple Run District. Went to high school in Enosburg Falls, Vermont, and when I graduated was faced with the challenge of climbing my way out of poverty. I grew up in a very low-income home with my mother just working and my stepfather disabled, so my entire life has been living paycheck to paycheck and trying to work my way up. And that's part of why I'm running for office this year. There are a lot of people who don't have time to advocate for themselves. There are a lot of people who the next worry is, where's our next meal coming from? Where's our next dollar coming from? And they don't have time to run for office. So now that I have gotten to the point where I am employed full-time and making ends meet, I have decided to throw my hat in to run for Senate because it's important to me. I went to college at CCV. I did Cold Hollow Career Center up in Enosburg, and I work at Milton High School now. So I work in a high school every day, along with coaching middle school track, so I get to see what students are dealing with. So it's awesome to be able to do a forum in St. Albans City School. I did go to school here for 1 year. I did my Head Start program here when I was like 4. So originally lived in St. Albans for like 1 year, so it's nice to be back here.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Brock?
Hi, my name is Randy Brock. I've had kind of an unusual career. I started off as a soldier, and then I became a police officer. Then I started a business here in Vermont with just myself. Once it grew to about 1,000 employees across the country, I sold the business, went to work for a large financial services company, and then when I left there, I decided, gee, maybe I should try to do something else to give back. And so I was elected Vermont State Auditor. The auditor is the one who's responsible for looking at the books of the state and making sure that they balance. I did that for 2 years, and then I was elected to the Senate. I'm now in my 3rd term of the Senate, and I'm seeking a 4th term. And in the Senate, I've never had so much fun. It's a very interesting place to be because you deal with big issues such as school financing, such as the opiate epidemic, such as how to fix education, but you also deal with the small things that aren't really small because they affect people. When Habitat for Humanity in Highgate didn't have a place to go, their senator helped them try to find a solution. When West Rock in Sheldon had a problem dealing with Efficiency Vermont,
they look to their senators and their representatives to try to work with the state agencies to find something that worked for them in order to keep 150 jobs here in Franklin County. Those are the things that a senator does. It's very rewarding. I like to do what I do, and I hope to go back to Montpelier again in January to continue doing those things. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Parent?
Hi, everyone. My name is Corey Parent. I'm your current state representative here in St. Albans City and part of St. Albans Town. I do have to admit I have a little unfair advantage, I think, of anyone here. I'm a city school alum, and a lot of your teachers here were teachers that I had growing up. In fact, I was just writing down the list of political offices I've held. It started getting elected to the student council in 6th grade here. I was president of the student council my 8th grade year here, and we got a student on the school board where I served with Mr. Coffey's wife, Trudy, for that year. I was class president at BFA and went on to become student body president where I went to college at St. Lawrence University. In there at 19 years old, I managed a $1.5 million budget, and we planned activities on campus and did all that fun stuff. It was right here in this school that I learned how great of a community we have. Growing up here in St. Albans, the great teachers I had, some of the best mentors in my life. I'm still good friends with a lot of them. Mr. Delorier, who's no longer a teacher here, is still one of my biggest mentors, who I talk to about political issues. He was mayor of St. Albans at the time. He was my teacher. And all these experiences, have led me to get back to the community that I love, more than just about anything in this world. Being state representative has been the biggest honor in my life at this point professionally, and I decided to run for the state senate because there was, one, a retirement, but two, I think we needed to bring a new perspective to the state senate. Someone who was a little younger, somebody who fought for priorities from this community, ones that we've heard in the last debate: affordability, economic development, combating our opiate epidemic, and one that I just figured out here, that if elected to the state senate, I'd be the first St. Albans City School student ever elected to the state senate. So I think that'd be something neat that you guys could look to. I only graduated here 14 years ago. Actually, when I left City School, I went on to help a local politician because I was interested in politics, get elected state auditor. Now he's my running mate, and hopefully with a couple of votes, my seat mate. So Randy Brock was a mentor of mine, and I'm here tonight to talk about the issues as we move on.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Lucas Wagner with the first question.
Thank you. According to Forbes magazine, Vermont is ranked 48th in best states to do business in. What do you think about the current business environment in Vermont? Do you think we need to improve it? If so, how? I'll start with you, Mr. Tanner.
Yeah, like anything, we can always do better. I have heard from many business owners that Vermont is hard to do business in, and I've seen, my best friend used to own a restaurant. They owned Halverson's Cafe, or Halby's up in Enosburg, and I've seen what they've struggled with growing up, and I've seen how hard it can be to own a business in Vermont, so we can always do better. My approach for doing better and making Vermont more business-friendly would be the if you build it, they will come type of mentality. You look at what we've done in St. Albans with the funding and making the downtown a beautiful place. Just in 2008, there were no businesses here for the most part because everything was shut down, and now you have new sidewalks, new roads, and it's a walkable place, and there's, one or two storefronts that are empty now? And I think by improving the infrastructure, you can attract more businesses to Vermont. We are a small state, and we are not going to be able to untax places like New York. We are not going to say to places like New York, yeah, we can offer you such a lower tax rate, because it's just not feasible for Vermont. So what I want to do is I want to improve our infrastructure. Good roads, good sidewalks, better broadband internet. So if you want to start a business up in Berkshire, Vermont, you can. If you want to start a business up in Alberg, you can. Right now, you're really limited to as where you can set up shop because of the way our state is structured and how broadband has not gotten to every corner of the state. And I also work with local businesses to look at the permitting cost. I am a member of the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. We see a lot of good projects come through there. And permitting should not be as expensive as it is right now, especially if you are looking to give back and hire Vermonters for good, high-wage jobs.
Thank you. Now we'll go on to Randy Brock. Mr. Brock.
Thank you. If you ask people what concerns them more than anything else. It's jobs and the economy in Vermont. It's the issue of Vermont is a high-cost place to do business. Our energy costs are high, our electricity costs are high, low compared to New England, but high compared to the rest of the country. Our regulatory environment is complex and obscure, and it's very difficult for people to start a new business and maintain it. More than that, we have a high tax structure in Vermont, tax structure that makes us uncompetitive with a lot of other parts of the country in which taxes are lower, particularly business taxes. One of the reasons is our spending, and that's something where I think we can do an awful lot. We can look at how we spend money. So often we start new programs and we spend huge amounts of money on them, but we don't go back and look at asking ourselves, are these things really working? Are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? We don't go back and look at what we've done, and that's one of the ways in which we can save money by doing things that are more efficient and more effective and stopping doing things that are not. We can look at our overall tax structure, which is a major problem. So often we go out and we put a Band-Aid on an issue, such as, for example, property tax. And I know we're going to talk about that later, in which we say, hey, our property taxes are too high, so therefore let's go fix property taxes. Well, that's not the sole problem. The problem is the entire tax code. And each part of it relates to the other part, and you got to do it all at once. We haven't done that. However, I added to the tax bill this year something called the Tax Structure Commission that's designed to step back and look at all of our taxes as a whole and try to figure out how to make them fair, more equitable, more efficient, lower cost to operate, and get more bang for our buck. Those are the kinds of things that we need to do in order to solve this problem.
Thank you. On to you, Mr. Parent.
So when I went to St. Lawrence University, I went and earned an economics degree, and one of the phrases we hear there is one that I don't think many people in state government get. It's not for the benevolence of the butcher that we get our meat every day. What that basically means is that people don't go to work sometimes just for the fun of going to work. You know, businesses don't go into business just to go into business. They go into business to be profitable. They go in to make money. They go in, to sell a product or to make a product. And what we have to learn as a state, too, that when we make a lot of good products and we have this economy here, but we really struggle bringing in larger businesses. We really struggle bringing in outside investment, and we really struggle on bringing outside dollars into the state of Vermont. If we don't promote our state a little bit better and follow some of the policies Randy's talking about, lowering taxes and so on and so forth, we lose out on that. And where I really find that is one of the other questions we're going to get to here is younger people. Many businesses, and especially you folks here sitting in the front row, small businesses a lot of times can't take on the risk of hiring a new employee. It needs to be a larger business. Whether you want to hear it or not, and as a young person, it's hard for me to hear, sometimes your first couple years on a job, the investment they make in you as an employee, you're not actually making the business that much money. So we need businesses that can handle that kind of capital investment to grow our economy and to give people the experience they need here in Vermont. And that's why, in the House this year, I helped push a bill through that Randy ended up getting through the Senate. That saved those jobs up in Sheldon at the paper mill. It ended, they have a factory in Vermont, they have a factory in Ohio, and they came to us and said, we can make the same product much, much cheaper in Ohio than we can in Vermont, and here's one of the biggest reasons why. Now we can shift our production to Ohio, or you guys can help us make this change so that we can keep jobs here. Well, it was a no-brainer for us to make that change. It was a bipartisan bill. Everyone in the legislature, except I believe one senator, voted for it. So anytime you get anything through the legislature, 179-1, it's a pretty big deal. But we need folks who are going to be focused on a growing economy, not those who believe that businesses are in it for their benevolence. They don't. People need to understand that it's easier for us to stay home than it is to go to work. So we need to incentivize people to go to work and businesses to continue to invest and grow.
Thank you. Now on to Ms. McCarthy.
So it is a difficult climate oftentimes for small businesses here in Vermont. Part of that is because the laws are designed for larger businesses and sometimes can be onerous for them. I think we really need to look at our educational system and how we're growing the workforce for the next generation and really developing people that have the skills that our employers are looking for. I think Vermont is incredibly entrepreneurial, and we see some really good small businesses sprouting up. And I do think some people go into business for the love of what they do. I was a small business owner here in St. Albans for 5 years with my sons, Cosmic Bakery and Cafe, and I know how important it is to be able to give the people that are working for you good wages and good benefits, to be able to attract them and to keep them. Whether you're a small employer or a larger one, those things are really important to your workforce. As a person who runs a nonprofit now with 45 employees, I know those things are really important too. Those people go home to their families as well, and they need to have stable wages, and they need to know that there's a good future for themselves and for their children. I think we need to really be selling the Vermont brand even more. We have some amazing products here. We have a great place to live. We can attract other people to come live here and work here if we design things well, and we are promoting the types of things that we have here that attract people to come and stay. Like our waterways and cleaning them up and making sure that they are healthy for the future, our working landscapes that we have, the agritourism that is going on, the wonderful local foods and businesses that we have. All of those can be attractants to people to come here and work and to play and to stay. So I'm excited about what's possible actually within our small business community and in the larger business community, and what it is we can do to attract people to come here to our state, and particularly to Franklin County and Alberg, and to make their homes and to add to our economy and to our community. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Now I would like to introduce Lila Rouleau up to the podium.
Hi. By 2024, the minimum wage in Vermont will be raised to $15 per hour. What is your opinion on the minimum wage going up in Vermont? Do you think we need to improve it? If so, how? We'll start with you, Mr. Brock.
Well, let me just add that the minimum wage bill to take it to $15 an hour by 2024, although it was passed by the legislature, it was vetoed by the governor. And so, therefore, that minimum wage law is not going to go in effect. I wouldn't be surprised to see that bill come up again in the legislature in the next session. I voted against that bill when it came up in the legislature, and I voted against it for a number of reasons. The first of all, you cannot legislate your way to prosperity. By simply raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, you ask yourselves individually, if you owned a store or a business and the government told you to raise the minimum wage, what would you do? Well, the first thing you'd do is you'd raise your prices, and that's called inflation. And so you raise your prices, that makes it more expensive, and so the person who's earning $15 an hour has to spend more to buy the goods and services that they would have bought before. Our joint fiscal office, which is the legislature's arm that examines spending, looked at the $15 an hour minimum wage, and they concluded it would result in the loss of about 2,800 jobs. And so again, you ask yourself, if you're a person who makes $12 an hour or $13 an hour, would you rather make that or would you rather be unemployed? There's also the inflationary effect for businesses. I talked to a small business owner here in St. Albans, and he says, you know, this guy, and he points to a guy in the front of his business, he earns $17 an hour. If the minimum wage became $15 an hour, I would have to raise his wage also. The net effect is that every piece of good or services that we buy would likely increase in price without any increase in value. Now, that being said, we have low unemployment right now. Virtually nobody makes the minimum wage right now. Employers raise wages as their needs arise, and that's what will happen.
So a pretty good way for you guys to think about this one. How many of you have been to the grocery store or even McDonald's in the last couple of weeks here in St. Albans? Raise your hand, front row. Have you seen the self-checkout? Have you seen now you go to McDonald's, you can order your meal right on the screen and someone brings you your food. Companies, when they look at these costs, as Randy said, inflationary, are going to go, is it worth investing $1,000 into a machine where people go and use it their own, or into higher wages? Well, in the long run, from a business decision, they're going to invest in that machine, and that's where we're going to lose jobs. As Randy said, the nonpartisan Joint Fiscal Office, as legislators, we have folks who help us draft the legalese of laws, and we have folks who do the math when we say we have an idea what's the impact going to be on the state of Vermont, and they said for the foreseeable future we'd lose about 3,000 jobs a year, and those are jobs that you guys will be looking to fill in the next 4 or 5 years as you go to high school to help save up for college. Those are jobs. I remember when I was a young kid, I actually worked at, it's not there anymore, but Pizzeria. It was an arcade there on Lake Street. And then I went to work at Macro, which was making telephone calls because they paid $2 more than Pizzeria. And I remembered as a kid, I go, well, I can make more money. I'll go there. And Randy's right. Our job is, as we're out on this campaign trail, is to go out and talk to businesses. There's Vermont Precision Tools in Swanton who'll hire you at more than $15 an hour right now. There's Superior Technical Ceramics in the industrial park who'll hire you at more than $15 an hour right now. There's Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. There's the St. Albans Co-op. We have a shortage of employees right now and a workforce for folks to go. If you want to make more than $15 an hour right now, you can already do it without the legislature doing it, and you can actually make much more and get better benefits. So I think what we need to do is invest more in why are folks working minimum wage jobs throughout their life, and if what factors are causing those, and how do we support those folks to get the skills they need so that their earning potential is unlimited, not just stuck at, when you set a floor. And you'll learn as you guys grow, and maybe if you take economics classes, minimum wages don't work. They create an artificial floor that causes waste and inefficiency in our economy.
Mr. McCarthy?
So I do believe that we need to increase the minimum wage, because I believe that people need to have ownership over their own resources and their choices, whether it's about a job or something that they're going to purchase. And I think even in the work that I'm doing right now, I have people who are well-educated people who are doing jobs in early education and early intervention who are making less than $20 an hour and are finding it necessary to work a second job in order to be able to afford their homes and their transportation and their health care and their child care. I think that by putting more money back into Vermonters' pockets and giving them choices, it's really important that they will be able to, again, make better choices and invest their money as they see fit. And I really think that that's an important piece that we need to consider. Minimum wage right now is not a livable wage. It is not a housing wage, and it certainly isn't one that is survivable for most people, even in two-income families. So I think it's really important that we continue to grow job opportunities that pay better, but that the floor be raised so that people are not living in poverty and that people have better choices. This also means that we need to look at things like the benefits cliff, where it makes it kind of impossible to access things like child care financial assistance if you're making too much money, or other types of benefits that actually help people purchase food and keep a roof over their heads when they're not making a lot of money. So again, I want to give people their power back, and I think part of that is raising the minimum wage and doing it incrementally so that businesses can live within that. And I think there are other things that we need to consider in order to stabilize our families and our communities and give our kids a good future. Thanks.
So the first part that I want to address when it comes to the minimum wage is why we have the minimum wage is because of a labor movement where people fought for everything they had. Back in before the Industrial Revolution, while this stuff happened, you would work in a factory and make pennies for a day of work, make pennies for 10 hours of work, make pennies for 16 hours of work. So the minimum wage was not put in as something to help boost the economy. It was put in to give people who agreed to work just a standard of living, a minimum of, hey, you work this many hours, you get paid this much. That's why we have a minimum wage. We have 5,000 people living in poverty in Franklin County. These are U.S. Census numbers from the last census. We have around 5,000 people living in poverty, and a lot of those people do want to try to work, but when you try to work your way out of poverty, the system cuts you off at the knees. I worked at Maple Fields for about a year in 2012, and when I went to ask for a raise, they told me it wasn't in the budget. Found out that my manager got a bonus for keeping payroll low. That was unfair to me, and I was working 40 hours, 50 hours. I am a strong supporter of the $15 minimum wage, because if you are willing to work 40 hours a week, you should be paid to the point where you can pay your bills. Automation is coming. Whether we raise the wages or not, those machines are going in at Hannaford's, those machines are going at McDonald's. that's another issue that we will hopefully get to in future forums, because automation is coming whether we like it or not. We need to take care of the people working in Franklin County now. We work in a service industry, and if you look at the people working these minimum wage or low wage jobs, a lot of them are support staff in school. A lot of them are students who have gone and gotten educated and cannot find jobs in their field. And a good amount of them are single mothers who are just trying to put food on the table. My mother did this for me, and I couldn't thank her enough, because she worked 40, 50 hours just trying to put food on the table because the wages were not enough. So yes, it's a good thing, and I support it.
Thank you. I'd now like to welcome up Jack Ford.
Vermont continues to have a difficult time keeping young people from leaving the state. How would you help stop this from happening? What do you believe we can do to bring more young people into the state? We'll start with you, Mr. Parent.
Sure. So it was actually, probably about 8 years ago now that I was speaking to another group of Team USA students about an internship I had just done in New York City with a large financial services firm, and that I had accepted a job to go work down there. What I often didn't talk about is I didn't particularly ever like New York City, and I didn't particularly like working at the job that, or the internship that I had in New York, but it was a well-paying job that gave me a lot of experience and responsibility at a fairly young age. But I spent my whole senior year at college. I had accepted that job before my senior year, figuring I was lucky enough to have a job when I graduated from school to not complain, but I was looking for a job back here in Vermont. And unfortunately, I couldn't find a job in Vermont that would, one, give me responsibility that I was looking for, and two, a modest income that I was looking for at the time. And so I went to New York for 9 months and was lucky enough during that time to keep looking for jobs and to find a job back at the University of Vermont Medical Center. So I've lived it. I've been there. You know, I had to leave this town that I never planned on leaving. My wife and I both grew up here in St. Albans. We always wanted to raise our kids here in Franklin County. This was always home and where we wanted home to be. So we didn't leave because we wanted to. I left because that's where employment took me. So to turn this trend, I think it's every reason why I'd run for office. It was actually shortly after we moved back to Vermont that I ran for office and was elected to state legislature for these reasons. We need to make Vermont more affordable so young Vermonters can afford to rent an apartment here, can afford to buy their first homes here. We need to make Vermont more affordable so that there are jobs here that can utilize the skills that they learn in college or in trade school or out of tech centers. And we need to make sure we have vibrant communities like we have. We need to make sure we're investing in our downtowns like St. Albans City has, and making sure this is a place where people want to live.
Ms. McCarthy.
So I guess I should jump off from where Corey left off. I agree that we need to make Vermont a place where people want to stay. I also am really curious about the statistics for young people who leave, who then choose to come back and raise their families here and put their roots down here because they've had a chance to explore the world a little bit. Not everybody who leaves stays away, I suspect, but I would love to know more about that. I do think that we need more and better job opportunities here for our young people. I think they need to have livable wages when they get those jobs. I think we need to make sure that our communities are places that people want to come to and to stay, whether we're attracting new people to come as a workforce or we're trying to keep the young people who are here, because they are our future. And I think when you have vibrant downtowns like we have right now in St. Albans with livable, walkable, healthy kinds of things to do, it's really an important draw. And that's something we can promote too. We can talk about the importance of the things that we already have here and the types of things that will keep young people here. We need to understand their reasons for going away, whether it's for employment or to travel and learn more about the world or to try their wings a little bit before they come back and put down roots again. I think we need to know those things, and I think we need to hear what it is that they want in order to keep them here, which I'm sure is not the least of which is a quality of life, which includes a livable wage and a job that helps them meet their hopes and dreams. Thanks.
So yeah, Vermont, I think we all agree that we want people coming into Vermont, all four of us up here. And Vermont is a wonderful place to live. I am lucky that I was able to find some employment. While I've had to work twice or 3 times as hard, I've been able to stay in Franklin County for the most part. Right on the outside in Milton now, where I do make a living wage. And actually, I met my significant other because she came from New Jersey because she did not like New Jersey and chose Vermont to relocate to. Getting people to stay right out of high school, I think, is a losing battle. I think that's a downhill climb because, the minute you get out of high school, you want to spread your wings a little bit. You want to get away from your parents in some cases. You want to learn to be independent. You want to go away to college. I think what we can do is attract those people back and attract people to come to Vermont. Vermont, we have a wonderful environment here. We have a beautiful mountain ridge on the Long Trail with Mount Mansfield and Campbell's Hump that you can hike and get spectacular views, and we need to market that to people, right? We also need to clean our lakes so we can market our lakes so when you come to Vermont you can go swimming, you can go hiking, and along with those two things, bring 21st century jobs into the state. Dealer.com is one of the bigger companies in Vermont now because they are a 21st century industry. When you had Dealer.com coming in, I'm sure a lot of people didn't know about them and didn't know about what they did. And that's what we need to start doing as Vermont. We need to go to these tech industries. And it goes back to what I said earlier about if you build it, they will come, right? We need to be able to go to tech industries and say, hey, we have these wonderful spaces in towns like St. Albans for you where you have Montreal just a little over an hour away. You have beautiful mountains a little over an hour away, and your employees not only are going to want to work here, they're going to want to live here. And I think that will be the strategy that we can use to get people to come back into Vermont, whether they be young people, middle-aged people, or people who just want to spend their life here, because that's how we can grow as a state.
We need to focus on the innovation economy, and we've started to do that. We now have businesses and industries in Vermont in which we do things very well. The captive insurance industry is a classic example in which we have thousands of jobs in Vermont serving that particular industry. A captive insurance company is one that in which a large corporation becomes its own insurance company, but it has to have a structure to be able to do that. Well, Vermont created that structure, and now we're the leader in the entire United States of captive insurance industries. Why? Because we created a government agency to regulate it that knows how to do it very well, and is very fast on its feet in doing it. And we're the leader in the nation. There are other industries like the benefit corporation in which we could become the center of benefit corporations in America by providing, again, the kind of structure. Those are things that create jobs, and it's amazing, like in captive insurance, the kinds of jobs and the range that it produces. There are other industries like blockchain technology in which we're also involved. The state has a focus on investment technology in which we have a number of incubator spaces around the state. And you go into them and you look at young people, typically recent college graduates, who create new businesses and new ideas. And now we're creating a structure to help them grow those ideas and build them. You have Champlain College that has a program called BYB, Bring Your Own Business to College, which looks for kids who are developing their own business. They bring that business to college and they learn how to manage it, how to operate it, and how to grow it, all while getting their college degree. We can be innovative in what we do, but above all, what we have to do is we have to put that sign out at our borders that says Vermont is open for business. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think that Vermont tries to chase away business, and I think some of our state agencies, in fact, do that with over-regulation. But I think we could be creative, and I think those of us as leaders have got to continue to push that idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will have the candidates give their closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to share their final messages with the audience. Ms. McCarthy, you'll go first.
First and foremost, I want to thank Team USA and your teachers and your school for hosting us tonight. This has been delightful. Corey had said to me last night in another place, this is the best one, and it really has been. I'm so glad to be here tonight. I am really excited to have the opportunity to run and hopefully to serve. I really want to be a voice for the families in Franklin County and Alberg. I'm a really great listener. I'm somebody who can take action and do that well and be accountable. I am coming from a family of educators. My husband's on your school board. My youngest son is a music educator by degree, and my daughter has been a principal and is a teacher. So I know the value of education, and I want to see us have a really strong system from pre-K up through postgraduate. I want people to have good opportunities for employment and for good wages. I want to see us clean up our lake and preserve our working landscapes. And most of all, I want to make sure that we're taking care of our families, listening to what they want and need, and being able to help them get that. And I think I can do that. I want to make sure that people have good incomes and that they have health care that they can afford that will meet their needs. I want to make sure that there's child care that meets both families' needs and employers' needs. And I want to make sure that we are really making this type of educational system a gold standard, not only for Franklin County, but for Vermont. Thank you all tonight for having me. If you haven't voted already, grown-ups, you can do that. It's early voting time still. And if not, we'll see you at the polls November 6th. Thanks very much for having me tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Tanner?
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun at this. I just want to say that, I've had the smile on my face the entire time. This is so awesome, and I wish I could have done something like this when I was a student myself. So my closing statement, I'm running for Senate because I want to be the voice for those who are too busy trying to get by to share their voice. That's why I got into politics. I've been saying since 4th grade I don't want to be a politician, and I'm not a politician still. Even though I'm running for office, I've never been somebody who's wanted to do this. I've done this because this is how I can help. This is how I figure that I can help those families who are struggling to get by. And this is how I feel I can be most efficient in getting the word of people who need help out there. If you want more information about me, you can visit my website, tannerforsenate.com. And I'm running because I want to listen to everybody as well. That's a big thing for me. Every side of the aisle. I have one of my best friends is a Republican and is voting for the Republicans to my left here. And I still have wonderful debates with him every week. And I'm asking for your vote because I think it'd be important to get a working class person who works in the school and understands the struggle of living paycheck to paycheck, making your laws. When it comes to affordability, who better to know about affordability than someone who's had to get a whole week with $40 in their bank account, right? Because I've had to live that, and I've had to live that. Even this year I've had to live that. So I ask for your vote because it's time to put somebody down in Montpelier who understands what it's like to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps.
Thank you. Mr. Brock?
A lot of my focus is on building an economy that works, of jobs and opportunity, of a great school system at a price taxpayers could afford, but with a focus on knowing that individual Vermonters need more money in their pockets and a recognition that they probably know how to spend that money better than those of us in Montpelier do. That's what I've focused on doing in everything that I do in Montpelier. I believe in listening, and I believe in acting on what I hear. I don't believe in listening, though, blankly. I look at also, prove it to me, tell me in the questions that I ask that the programs and how we're spending your taxpayer money is in fact working. Tell me about education, of how kids are doing with the education that they get. Are they learning what we're hoping that they do in fact learn and are able to use that information? This forum tonight was great. You guys asked the right questions, and you asked them very, very well, and you made us think and you made us answer them. And that's what we hope to do in the legislature, is ask each other those same kinds of questions and learn from them and act on them. But don't just listen to what we've said tonight. I ask each one of you to think a little bit politically, and 6 months from now, 8 months from now, 2 years from now, as you look at whoever you elect to these offices, look at what we've done, and then ask, did we really answer your questions, and did we answer them accurately? It's time for each of you to think about where you might go politically. Corey's a classic example of how a kid could start at your age looking at what happens in Montpelier and getting involved and actually making a difference. You're the future leadership of the state, and I really encourage you to take up that mantle, and thank you for what you've done thus far.
Thank you. Mr. Parent.
One of my favorite poems I've ever read or had the opportunity to listen to, it's I don't remember the name of it necessarily, but it's about a bridge builder, someone who comes to a chasm vast and wide and builds a bridge. He gets across the chasm and then builds a bridge back, and someone else goes, fellow traveler, why do you build the bridge? You already passed the chasm. He goes, I don't build it for me, I build it for the person to come. I've been lucky to grow up here in St. Albans. I've been lucky to have great parents and great mentors and folks like Randy who've allowed me to develop into the person who I am today. And I'm running for state senate so that I can help build the bridge a few more steps further so that you guys can continue on and build a few more steps so that my son, just born 4 months ago, can continue on. Now, each of those steps are issues we talk about: affordability, jobs, our opiate epidemic. We all have challenges that we have to build upon, and we all have to do better than the generation that came before us. It was at this school that I learned to leave a place cleaner and better than when you found it, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do for our community and our county. I'm trying to leave it a little bit better than the way I'm inheriting it, so that you guys have a little better place to come back to. And I hope that you guys take up the same mantle and do that, so that my son and his future siblings have that same opportunity to make this community a little bit better place. So to put it bluntly, when we put all the issues aside, I'm running to build that bridge a little bit further so that you guys can take on the mantle and lead our community forward. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the 2018 Team USA Candidate Forum. We'd like to thank you again for joining us, and we'd wish you the best luck in November. On behalf of Team USA, in appreciation for your time, we'd like to give you each a Team USA bracelet. Thank you.